we can record, and hit the pause button there. So we are recording. We are on tape, and this is how to prompt Contras. It is Monday morning, right, and we're still in Reno. Just want to make sure that Jerry was right. If you have any questions or comments, we do have a microphone floating around. Stu Shacklet will carry it out. I'm Paul Moore. I come from the large metropolis of North San Juan, California. It's about 100 miles due west of here. The sign at the city limit says population 125. And if you blink, you will miss the gas station and the bar. But it's absolutely gorgeous up there. Working with me is one of our icons, one of our great heroes, legends of square and contra dancing, Mr. Herb Egender. Been calling for over 50 years. He's won the Silver Star Award. He's attended all of the ContraLab or our CALLERLAB conventions, and it is my great honor to be able to work with one of our legends. I would also like to ask Herb a question. They put a picture up there where it was you and Les Gocher and Bob Osgood, and that's the question. And who? You slept through that part too. You know, even the people who put the slideshow together, they do not know who that fourth person was, and we're trying to find out. My guess is it was Ray Orm, but we'll get together with Tim and figure out who it was. Okay, this is how to prompt Contra, and I have a handout which people may grab as you leave. This way then you won't be reading while we're talking. But I have a title on here called Now We Will Count to 8, which is, of course, borrowed directly from Sesame Street. If you remember the count on Sesame Street, I assume we're going. Good. And, you know, you would choose a number to count to. And this is the big number that we do need to work on in contra dancing, is that contra dance is very, very much music driven. It has been said that there's a partnership that is built in contra dance, and it's between the dance and the music and the dancer. What's missing in that? The prompter. The prompter's job is simply to help form that partnership. And so we need to be very much music aware and help our dancers to become music aware. And if we don't do that, it's not going to be contra dancing. We're going to have slid off into that other area, which can be fun also, but it's just problem solving. How do I get from this position to the next one, rather than how do I dance? When Herb and I got together and we did this long discussion on how we were going to handle this, Herb's comment was, well, we just tell everybody, let the dancers have the first beat, and then we'll figure out what to do with the other 59 minutes of the session. And so I think that this is something that we need to look at most sincerely, is the music, and I think perhaps a place to start. I don't know if you have one handy. Do you have a waltz in there? You don't have a waltz? And for whatever reason, even though I'm plugged into the input on that, for music, there we go. Now I'll find a waltz. Have people ever heard this thing? It's a CD called Camp Town by Joe Craven. Got to see him live, and I know how he did this. Yeah. It's all classic Contra dance tunes, but done in different rhythms. So here we get Soldier's Joy done to South African rhythm. By the way, this is a single musician throughout the whole thing, and he did it by computer looping. He would get up on stage and he would do, say vocally, he'd establish one rhythm, and then he'd grab an angel food cake can and start tapping and getting another rhythm going. And then he did everything. One musician, many, many sessions. So while we're doing this, we can start counting the beats. You want to count beats while I found a waltz?
I want to ask a question. As I look out there, I see people that have been doing concerts for 50 years or more and doing them well. How many of you here are not doing concerts and are just thinking about maybe getting into concerts? Raise your hands, because that will certainly dictate about what we want to do about some of the subjects we want to talk about. Stu, how many years have you been doing concerts? 50? About 50? I see some others.
Name of the Sea is Camp Town, and it's by Joe Craven. Okay. He has a new CD out called Mojo, M-O''J-O-E, and it's more traditional folk music type stuff. Everybody can count on a waltz, can't you? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Did you ever notice that in waltzes they come in 2-measure mixtures? Because if you go for the man left, right, left, then you have to go right, left, right. And you're not going to get there unless you go ahead and resolve that. And if you were round dancing, you would never think of leaving out part of the round. It just doesn't make any sense. But how many times do we in squares rush and leave out part of the dance? Cutting corners or whatever. And therefore we're not paying as much attention to the music. But if we're hearing waltz time, people will pick up on it right away. And they will go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. And Herb, you had a reel or something like that you were going to throw on to make the next adjustment. He's going to tag in when he feels like it. So we need to be able to do the same thing with Contra dance, and we're counting to 8. That most Contra dance music is written in phrases of 8 counts, and I just happen to have a nice piece of Scottish music here that people can begin to listen to, and our first trick is to find the first beat of the 8-count phrase. This is Jimmy Shand, if anybody wants to know. Everybody can shout on 1. Isn't that tough? Okay. There are literally people who can't find that. If you've been out dancing, have you found people who do not promenade, 1 step per beat? They'll go 3 steps for every 4. And to me, that's like, fingernails on a chalkboard. So we can find the 1 beat, there is also a secondary major beat, and that's number 5 that we're going to need to deal with also. So we might as well pick this up. And see if you can give me 1 and 5. Yeah. And it's really easy on that piece of music, isn't it? Okay, let's change. I have to find my other. What'd you do with my other book there? There it is. Herb keeps stealing things. I've got new things that he doesn't have. How do you think I got half of my stuff?
Why didn't you bring something to be prepared with, Paul? Great. For those of you who are thinking about getting in Contras, let me digress and say this about my experience with Contras. I did squares, rounds, and Contras for some 50 years, and it was my experience that I could have people on the floor dancing to the music and having a good time using Contras much more quickly than I could with squares or rounds. With squares or rounds, there is a lot of preliminary work to be done. Even if you start very simply with for instance, in squares, even if you just start with circle left and right, first thing you have to do is tell people what the step is. Do not hop, skip, and jump as you have seen it done in movies and so forth. You have to smooth them out a little bit. That's even before you get into squares. Then if you start getting into even the simplest of squares, you have to explain what a square is, what the various positions are, and so forth. So it's a little bit before you have them dancing even the simplest square and dancing to the music. In round dancing, you have to tell them what the basic steps are. Quite often we start with a forward 2-step. You do a step, close, step. And it's amazing how many people I have found who cannot understand that close. Bring the foot up, change weight, stand on that foot, and then step forward to the same foot that you started with. Boy, that is really complex for some people. Now, when you talk about it, it sounds kind of silly. But it takes a while. And then you start with the other foot. And you teach 2 forward 2-steps perhaps. You say, gee, that's very good. Come back next week and we'll talk about the waltz Bach. In Contras, people already know the basic step when they walk in the door. And there's not a great deal of work to change that walking in the door to walking to music. Getting people in a couple of lines, and in a very short time you can have them dancing to music and having a good time. So if you're thinking about Contras and you're just getting into it, consider that. I think you'll find that you can have people dancing to music, having a good time with Contras very quickly.
Which is perhaps a little push. Let's get Contras into the teaching program for square dancing. Then all of a sudden we will find that we'll graduate a whole bunch of people who can dance rather than just do figures. Anyway, here is a thing called Virginia Darling. It's off of the Lloyd Shaw Contra tune. A little bit different from the Scottish, but you can count it out the same way. Okay, you ready to go? No problem there, is there? Okay, let's change that just a little bit. How about a singing call? Do they work? I want the next two. do all of these tunes have in common? 8 beats and very strongly phrased. You know, you can find those very easily. Now I'm going to back up and play a hoedown. This one has been around for a good 20, 25 years. It's there, but it's harder to find. Would you want to use that for a contra dance? No, because most dancers wouldn't find it. Most callers can't find it. And where's the melody line that would keep interest up and keep people involved in it? And it's just not there. Does it work as a hoedown for squares? Beautifully. Because we're not worried about 1 and 5 when we're doing squares. Anybody take a look at the plus list and see how many figures are 3 counts? Yeah. 2 I can live with. 4 I can live with. 3, what do you do with a 3-count figure? You better stack at least 4 of those up back to back, and then add a 4 count to it to come out even. Otherwise, you're somewhere else. So, most people, when they come to dancing, have already been trained to move on the first beat before they even get to your class. How many people have military experience? Right? Do I make my point there? How many have ballroom experience, ballroom dancing? Okay? You want to be right there on that first beat, correct? How many have played in a band or sung in a choir or an orchestra? Okay? Same thing. Who gets the first beat in a symphony? That's a trick question. The orchestra, not the conductor, right? The orchestra does not come in on beat 3. The orchestra comes in on 1. And all of the stuff that the conductor does at the beginning is get everybody's attention, and then the rate at which he raises and drops the baton sets the tempo. So everybody's playing at the same speed. But when it comes down to that point, then the orchestra knows that's when they all begin. Unless somebody makes a mistake. I heard that. Los Angeles Philharmonic at the Hollywood Bowl. Beautiful piece of music. Opens with a trumpet solo. And he blew the opening. And never got back on phrase for the orchestra. Oh, I think he was unemployed the next day. So anyway, people will want to move on that first beat. Military guys, it is not 3, 4, hut 1. That we're going to step out on 1. So our job as contra leaders is to give that first beat to the dancers. Not take it to ourselves, but give it to the dancers. Most of us are pretty good. If we're calling squares, we can find that first beat if there's a grand square. Can't we? In a singing call? Because we've listened to the other side of the record, we hear how the flip side does it. And we also know I've got to prepare people so I can sing for 32 counts and not have to worry about where we are in the music. But they will. We can find that. We need to do it consistently. Anything you wanted to jump in at this point? He says keep going. Yes. Microphone.
There we go. Hello. I have a question. on a lot of the Contra music, the traditional Contra music that is used. Yeah, I know who I am. Oh.
You can't read it, it's upside down.
Dick Mazziotti from Virginia. A lot of traditional Contra music that I use starts out with a but there are words to be put in there. And I have trouble finding that, getting them started. It's like I'm rushing at the very beginning to get those started when there's that kind of an introduction. You know, it almost starts like right here, where there's no introduction to it. Can you help with that?
As in this. Or is that what you're asking about? No. You must be extremely familiar with your music. I don't know if in caller training at any point they said you must play your music enough that if somebody were to drop the needle anywhere in the record, you would know where you are. And that is absolutely true here. And as you listen to these introductory chords, there is one there. By the way, did you notice that each of the chords is a little bit different in length? Okay? That gives you an idea of the tempo of the piece. How long they hold that chord is going to be an indication of the tempo that is going to be coming up. And if you are familiar with your piece of music, you know how long that chord's going to be. You know if there are one or two of them. And there are some pieces that they will play two chords before they get into it. And your job then is during that chord to tell the active dancers which way to face and what the step is going to be so that you can get started on time. Stu.
Stu Shacklet, Brandenburg, Kentucky. There's a number of tunes that are extremely good Contra music, but they have no introduction. Most of them are Michael Herman stuff. And I happen to have copyrights for his stuff, so I don't sell a lot of Contra music to Contra prompters because of the lack of introduction. But there's ways to get around that. And if you start the needle on the record and say, with the music, go forward and back. And then the music starts, and everybody's moving forward and back as soon as the music starts. So the prompt has to precede the actual needle sound coming from the record. But it is usable.
I'm Jerry Silverstein from San Jose, California. You started off with waltz, and I was wondering how you can use that type of music since it's phrased differently.
I started with a waltz simply so that we became music aware and could find the phrase. However, there are really quite a few waltz contras, and you will find that you'll end up with the same number of measures in a standard waltz as you will in a standard singing call tune or a standard contra dance tune. You're going to end up with the same number of measures. There are going to be 32 measures for the melody, and so that works out that you can do a number of standard contra dances in waltz time. We have a question, comment from Mr. Campbell.
You need to be aware that contra dance music is 40 bar, 48 bar, 32 bar. These are two beats to the bar. And you design the dance to fit the music. And we have lots of routines that we can do in contra dancing that fit this. This is the same thing with waltz music. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. How many beats, how many steps? And then you go into the next part and how many steps. But basically, you are timing your figures to fit the music, and there are lots more variety in terms of music structure that we use within contras than we do within squares. Cal Campbell.
Thank you, Cal. Paul has made the point, of course, of the importance of music and marrying music to the dance. Of course, the bottom line is dancer success. And, of course, we want prompter success, too, if we can get it. If you're beginning with contras, be very careful of the music you select. Select music that you like and that you are comfortable with, and select music that you think the dancers will like. Make your job as easy as you can make it. And I'd certainly not start new dancers or new prompters with waltz rhythm, because that's a little bit tough. And when you select your records, as the point as Stu mentioned, be careful what kind of records you select. For instance, I've got reels, and I've got 6/8 times, and I've got marches and all sorts of things here that have all got good beats. Here's one that is an old march tune. You'll recognize it immediately. And I said, gee, that march music is pretty good. Okay, everybody get ready to go. You can see that better than I can. That is March on the River Kwai. What's wrong with it? What's wrong with it? Well, there's no introduction, no pickup. You know, if you're getting ready to prompt and you're waiting for some pickup notes, you discover that the music, the piece is already 4 or 5 bars in before you realize it started. And so if I'm a new prompter, I'm just starting, and I say, well, I want a march, I'll go in and buy this record, and then I put it on. I discover that I've trapped myself. So select your music carefully, play it, see if you like it before you buy it.
And on that particular march, there is no rhythm section to begin with. You notice it didn't come in until, what, 16 bars into the music, something like that, till you finally heard that, you know, the snare drums and the bass drum come in on it, so that it made it, you know, even more difficult. That can be an interesting gimmick if you have good, experienced dancers. What I would recommend, if you're going to play that gimmick where there is very little rhythm to it, you know, no piano or bass or whatever, that maybe that is an interlude part of the dance after you've already established the tempo, and then you can drop out some things and people will keep shuffling in time to the music, and then when that percussion comes back in, it gives the crowd a real jolt and sends them up. How many people have March St. Timothy or Lighted Sconce on Lloyd Shaw? The next to the last time through the melody, almost all of the percussion drops out, and I think it was played on a hammered dulcimer or a harpsichord or whatever, and that's all you hear. And it is very, very quiet. It sounds almost like Mozart's playing. And then you come back to that last thing, and all of a sudden there are 5 or 6 instruments playing, and the crowd just goes through the roof. But that's a showmanship thing rather than... Here's another one, no intro. Did you? That strong note on the fiddle was your downbeat to the beginning of the dance. Once you get them going, after that, it goes beautifully. But you have to be aware that that's happening, how much lead time you have on your record or your tape or your disc or whatever, so that you press the play button and you say, with the one below, waiting for your record to kick in. Yes, question. We have Stu's waking up and getting the microphone back.
Don Thompson, San Jose. Great piece of music. Fantastic piece of music. What harm is there in waiting till 16 beats in?
No harm, but you have to be prepared to do it. And on River Choir you're talking about, if you just went in and bought that record on your way to do a dance, slapped it on the turntable, you might find yourself a little bit uncomfortable. I'm just saying, buy it. It's a good piece of music, but be sure you know how to use it and don't get trapped.
Stu Shacklet, again from Brandenburg. Normally, dances are written to particular pieces of music, and like Cal was saying, like there's 5 32s. That means 5 times 2, 32 bars, and that means your dance fits that. And if you go in 16 bars before you start the dance, then you're going to be in the middle of the dance when the music ends or something, if you haven't worked that out. So that's one of the things as a prompter that you've got to be aware of, that you want the dance to end when the music ends, not in the middle of a sequence or something.
Very often you'll see descriptions of contra dances, and they'll say music, and people will often put any good 32-bar jig or reel. Okay? But it doesn't say how many times that 32 bars needs to play. And I have a number of hoedowns that they're great music, but they go 8.5 times 32 bar. What do I do with that other 16 bars? We just finished the dance, and I don't want to end up halfway through the dance. So I have to be careful what dances I will put to those pieces of music, or I lift the needle before we get to the last time through, or whatever gimmick it takes. I have one that I love to do with Shadrach's Delight, if people are familiar with that, and it has you going, do a do-si-do to an ocean wave, balance, turn half right, balance, turn half left, swing your partner, go down, wheel around, come back, bend the line, and that is half the dance right there. It's got everybody facing across, and that's where the music ends. And that's not too bad. But if you've gotten, everybody, in some crazy position where they're facing the back of the hall and all of a sudden the music ends, they're going to say, there's something really strange here. And perhaps the caller doesn't know what he's doing. Many of the calls that we use in contra dancing are 8-beat calls. In squares, they may be 6. Like if we're in lines of 4 facing across, and you do a right and left through, dancers are going to do it in 6 counts in a square dance. You know very well that they will pass through. The man will plant his left heel and play crack the whip with a lady on a courtesy turn, correct? But in contra dance, you're going to get the 8, so 4 to get through, 4 to courtesy turn. Same with the lady's chain. If you use contemporary figures like flutter wheel, there go 8 counts. and it fits into the music very, very nicely. We usually swing for 8 counts, do-si-do in 8 counts, and so forth. But there are also some figures that are 4s. And that's why earlier we had you pick out the 5 count, because we have a lot of dances that say start off with your corner or your neighbor, whatever terminology you use in your neighborhood. Do-si-do, same lady swing, face the back of the hall, go down in 4. How many steps? Well, you probably want to go down 4 steps if you're going to go into a wheel around, because a wheel around is like a courtesy turn and should take 4 counts. Then you can come back up the hall 4 and bend the line in 4. Now you have to teach dancers how to bend the line in 4 counts instead of 2. But that's okay. That's a styling thing, and when they learn it, they really love doing it properly. And so we have to be able to find those different points in the dance. So here we go. With the corner, do-si-do, got behind, and swing. Go down in lines of 4. Wheel around. Come back. Bend the line. Ladies change. Chain back. Same 4. Left-hand start. See how I'm prompting ahead? Right-hand start. New below, do-si-do. And what beat do the dancers get? You get the first. They get the first to move on. But it takes advantage of knowing that those 4 count things are in there, and so I have to prompt, instead of beat 7 and 8, I'm prompting on 3 and 4 to get them to do that on the last half of the phrase. There are some figures that take 16 counts. Balance and swing. Usually you balance for 4, swing for 12. Hey for 4. Contra corners, designed to be 16 counts. And I think we're lucky sometimes if we get them there. But you need to be aware of how much time each figure takes and where it fits into the music. This may be now the time to let Herb jump in here, and I'll ask if we can get some people to help. I have a handful of copies, one per caller, one per couple, whatever. And if you don't get one, leave me a slip of paper and I'll mail one to you.
Again, I'm talking to primarily to those of you that may be just getting into Contras. And I said before, the bottom line is dancer success. Well, if we're going to give the dancers success, we're going to want to give them as much information as we can. And so if we're going to do a right-hand star, for example, if we're teaching the dancers, we're going to probably go into a lot of detail. Put your right shoulder in, raise your right hand, touch your fingers, make a star, walk 4 counts, and so forth. Well, starting on beat 5, you've got four beats to get everything in there. You're not going to do that in 4 beats. So you progress to the point where you can use less words. And maybe you could say a star by the right, and you could probably get that in time. As your dancers progress and they learn more, that'll probably be reduced to something like a star right, 2 words. And if they're really good and know the dance, you probably don't have to say very much. If they're in a position where the only thing they can do is the right-hand star, you'd probably just say star. So you make that progression in what you can fit into the time that you have in prompting. And the thing is to practice, because if you're calling the dancers or you're prompting dancers and you put something on and you're still at the point where you're using a lot of words, then you find yourself trapped without enough music or enough time to do the prompting. So practice is very important. Decide what you want to say. See if it fits into the number of beats that you have to say it. And don't wait till the dance and get trapped and find out, whoops, I can't say all of that. It's very disconcerting to the dancers if you slop over a few beats, or if you don't prompt in time so that they can do what you're asking them to do.
If you can flip to page 2, it says, let's take a look at one of my favorite dances. This is Howell's Break, written by Bob Howell. It's very, very simple, but interesting enough to keep going with it. And I've written it up in 3 different styles of notation. And as callers, we need to be able to decipher what the choreographer means in whatever form it has been written up. There are people who are specializing, trying to go back to figure out what the Playford dances are. And some of the terminology from 17th century is, we don't know what he meant, so we, try to figure it out, and then we have great big arguments about, what did John Playford really mean, and which book did you take it from, and so forth. But here we get the first version. It says Howell's Break, ALTDUP. This, by the way, is the version that's found in the Holden. Is it Kubitsky? Is that her name? Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, it's an unbelievable collection of dances, but they assume that whoever picks up this book knows something. And the dances are written in a shorthand that you do not see what the phrases are. They just run in some kind of shorthand the dances and list the figures in order. They assume that you can figure out that a do-si-do means 8 counts. So as we go through this, ALT-DUP is alternate duple, which is, 2 couples, couple 1 in each group of 4 crossed over. Okay? So we've gotten the formation. BLW, below. What is below? Okay. Right, but we need to know by definition that the commands are given to the active dancers, and the active dancers are always dancing with the couple that is below or away from the caller. So when it says below do-si-do, then the inactive dancers, or the 2s, have to reverse that and dance above, with a couple above them. And as callers, we need to be able to clarify that for the dancers before we get, try to pick this thing up and do it. So the low do-si-do, then SW, swing, whom. Right, because by definition, a do-si-do leaves you facing that person. And so that's who you would swing. Okay? Down in 4, automatically on a swing, whoever you swung, swang, have swung, swinged. We're a go. Wasn't that quick? These guys are good. Okay. Swing. And if you're going down, you're going which way? Away from the caller, down the hall. And in 4 means that you have lines of 4. Okay. California twirl. Obvious, using the square dance term. By the way, did you know that California twirl was a term that they gave that figure everywhere except for California. California, they called it a frontier whirl. Right. That was part of Were we at, how many were at the orientation last night? And John talked about some of the arguments they went through at the beginning of CALLERLAB on terminology. And was it Frank Lane loves Snapperoo? Can you, Buzz Brown? Anyway, it is what we now call star-through. But can you imagine what guys did to ladies' arms if they did a snapperoo? Yeah. And so anyway, the California twirl back means just came back the direction you came from. Bend is a bend to line, and that obviously is you're going to bend across to face in. LDCH, ladies chain, and then another ladies chain. STLT, star left, and then star right. No other notation, so what happens next? You're back to the top of the dance. And you need to be able to understand the notation. Then I gave it to you in the way the musicians would write it down in terms of the phrases, A1, A2, B1, B2, because very often the music is written in 16-count melody type things. And so what happens in that 16 counts? And when you're looking at that, now you can look at your music, say in the first 8 bars or 16 counts of the music, what is the feel of the music and what's going on in the dance, so that you can make a music and dance connection, so they don't fight with each other. And in a lot of traditional contra dance tunes, you play 2 melodies to make up a song. And you play the first melody of 16 beats twice, and then you change melody or a variation on it, and you play that one twice, and then you go back to the first one again, and you start the dance all over again. But this is an idea, tells you the melody structure of the dance, but you need to know how many beats each figure takes and when to prompt it. Then along came Don Armstrong, and he made life so easy for everybody, because if you look at this one, Howell's Break, alternate duple, intro, and then there are 6 dashes. This is assuming that you would get a standard, like a singing call intro, of 8 beats. And so I've got 6 dashes. You say nothing for those first 6 beats. Last 2 beats of the intro, you say below, do, si, do. And then you see during the first phrase, beats 1 through 8 of the dance, they are doing the do, si, do. And just before they finish it, then you say, same one swing. And this tells you exactly how many beats they get to do each figure, exactly when to say what, and it makes it much, much easier for particularly novice contra people to interpret what's going on. Of course, I have my own version. I just write down phrase 1, this is what happens, phrase 2, this is what happens, and I don't worry about anything else as long as I can read it. That's all that matters.
After you've had some practice prompting, you'll find that not only can you fit the directions in, but once in a while you can put a helping word in. Again, the bottom line is dancer success. Active swing, put her on the right and down in 4s. A lot of times the gentlemen forget where that girl ends up. They forget to put them on the right. That helps them a little bit, and that fits in easily, and you can get it in. And as time goes on, you'll develop some of those helping words in addition to the actual instructions of what the dance is. Practice, practice, practice.
Hal Campbell mentioned that we have a lot of variety of types of music that we can use. So far we've been playing mostly reels, which is 2/4 and 8-count phrases, and the ones I've used so far have been 64 counts overall, or 32 bars. There are some other rhythms that we like to use. Are you hunting down your...
You're talking about reels.
Right.
Here's a reel that feels sounds like a hoedown. A lot of you will recognize it. It's a Lloyd Shaw.
It's a reel. We think of, when we use that term reel, we think in terms of Scottish and Irish music, but really reel simply refers to 2/4 music that, you know, just has that good rhythm that rolls along that way.
That's pretty good.
And that's really what it was written for originally. You know? It's a great tune for a beginning fiddle player because he doesn't have to figure out too much on the neck. Yeah, Stu.
Stu Jacklett from Brandenburg, Kentucky again. For those of you that are just thinking about getting into Contra and you're looking for some type of material that would help you, there has been a self-paced program developed by ContraLab, and it is available. There's 6 lessons involved, and every time that you purchase one of these lessons, there's a monitor that works with you, and when you do your lessons, you send them back to your monitor, and they'll look at it and tell you, yeah, you're doing fine, or no, you've missed this one, go back and do it again, type of thing. And it is available through ContraLab, or I have them at my place at the Folk Dancer Record Center. And all the money and proceeds go to ContraLab, so it's stuff that's going right back into developing more training materials for it. But if you're interested in it, it's available, and it has music listed, it has sources listed, it has dances listed, and there's a tape that comes along with it that you have to interact with and do something and send it back to us, and we get to listen to it and say, yeah, you're doing fine, except, and then we pinpoint those little problems that we hear. One fellow sent me a tape, and he started out the first 2 sequences of the dance, he was perfect, right on time. And then he added one word. It was something like the men do si do. Well, he added the word and the men do si do, the word and. So every sequence he did, he was off 1 count. So it kept getting worse and worse and worse because he kept adding 1 word to that phrase instead of staying with the call like it's supposed to be. But we recognize those things, and then we send that back to you and let you evaluate what you've done and listen to it. So it is available.
And if you're interested, get hold of Stu, or you can get hold of me, and I'll get the word to Stu.
Yeah, and Art Hardy's here. He's the president of ContraLab. He's here.
Mr. Campbell. The book.
Let me recommend a couple books to you. He mentioned Don Armstrong. Don was a very precise writer, and he has a book out that is sold by the Lloyd Shaw Foundation called Contra Dance. It describes every dance with the little dash system that you've seen. Also, the second part of it, he describes the dance in detail. What do you do the first 8 beats? What do you do the second 8 beats, and on down through there? It's a very, very good book and a very complete book. It sells, I think, still for about $9 or $10 from the Lloyd Shaw Foundation. Now, personal, Bob Howell, Ken Kern, and I wrote this book, which is called Dancing for Busy People. It's written in the same pattern because basically I learned all all the preciseness that I think all three of us learned all the preciseness we had from Don. And his philosophy was, you write down dances as if someone 100 years now needs to pick it up, interpret the dance, and does not know a thing about what you're doing. And basically this dance has got about 400 dances in it. A lot of them are square dances, but a lot of them are prompted dances as well. This is available from Handhurst. Third item, if you're looking for music, I went to the Lloyd Shaw Foundation and I picked out 20 of their tunes that I thought were pretty good, which includes some full Scottish bands on it that we were able to get the copyright to. And I had them make up a CD. Handhurst has also got that. And basically for it's $22.50, and you end up getting 20 good tunes for a little over $1 each. And so you might want to go by the booth and take a look at that. If you want to see this book, I've got one sticking in the case. That's all.
Anybody else have something to sell?
Yona Chalk from Hawaii. I don't have anything to sell, but I use Cal's book in teaching in the schools, and it is invaluable. It is very clear. It's very easy to explain to the teachers. When I have to leave them with the material, I can show them the book. They can take the choreography from the book and use it in the classroom after I've left.
I will testify to the value of the book also. It's one that I use constantly.
Al Chalk, Yona's roommate. The Dancing for Busy People and the CD is also being sold by the National Dance Association. We were at the American Alliance for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance last week at their convention, and they're pushing Cal's book and CD.
We might as well put one more thing out here. Stu talked about the ContraLab teaching sequence. He also has the Kentucky Dance Institute, and he has over 70,000 tunes available. And if there's a piece of music that you are looking for, Stu probably has it. He probably has it. And if he's got a multiple, he'll sell you one of those. If he doesn't have a multiple, he'll make you a tape, all at a reasonable cost. Okay? So support our retired milestone man from Kentucky. How many were at San Antonio last year? And that was one of the really moving speeches that Betsy gave on Stu for winning a milestone award from CALLERLAB. And it's a treat to have him sitting here in the front row. He's going to tell me everything I did wrong as soon as we get out the door. But okay, we talked about rhythms. We talked about 2/4 for the reels. We've also mentioned 6/8, and so I thought I would toss on.
Feels like jig time, but it still has a good beat, no problem. What else can I say about 6/8?
Okay, if you're in 2/4, it's 2 quarter notes per measure, and it gives you 2 downbeats per measure. In 6/8, we're going to write it in 8th notes. There are going to be 6 of them per measure, but you're still going to have 2 strong downbeats per measure. And what makes the difference is you've got those 2 extra beats, which are going to fit in where 1 note fit before. Now you're going to have 2 notes fit in there. And I described it as it's higgledy-piggledy, 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 higgledy-piggledy. There is jig time. And you can hear that in this. Music's got just a little bit of lift to it, and there are certain places that a jig is absolutely the perfect piece of music to use because it fits the music. He's got another great sample right here. This is Callison Hill jig. Are we going to listen to the uncalled side here? Yes. And you can hear that you know, the extra little bit of notation in there gives you a really nice lift. But believe it or not, a lot of the jigs are slower tempo than a lot of the reels. But it doesn't feel or sound like it because you've got the extra notes in there that make it a little bit busier. We also have a thing we call the hornpipe. And if I can find my... Yeah, that's one. Anybody know what a hornpipe is? Besides being the dance that pirates do or whatever. Written in 2/4, rather than an 8-count melody, it's going to be a 16-count melody, and at the end of the 16 counts, in the percussion, they're going to put a right at the end of the 16 counts. So here we go with one of the great ones, Fisher's Hornpipe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Do you hear how the melody carried across there? Now, because of that, the bump bump every 16 beats, you really want to come up with dances that work in multiples of 16s, or a dance which we would call a hornpipe. Bob Howell's dance there, Howell's Break, would dance very well to a hornpipe because you do-si-do and swing, and that takes up one phrase of the melody, and there's that bump bump. Then you go down in 4, wheel, come back, bend the line, bump bump, ladies chain over and back, bump bump, left hand star, right hand star, bump. And the dance gets broken up into those 4 groups of movements. You would not want to use something where a movement crosses over the melody line there. It just feels weird. You know, it feels like you're starting on the wrong foot. You know, like you put your right foot in the stirrup to get on a horse. Something like that. Yeah. We've got a few minutes yet. What was the other thing that I was going to? It's over here. Or is it in here? There's a problem with having too much music.
Let me digress and tell a story, because he said, talked about the compromise on Snapperoo and so forth at the first convention. And a lot of you know Von Parrish. Von Parrish is a pretty big, husky guy. And one night, it was, I think, about midnight at that convention, Von Parrish and several other guys about his size were in the lobby of the hotel, and they were arguing hands up and hands down. And here are these 4 big guys out there in the lobby of the hotel. Looked like they were doing patty cake. And some businessmen walked in the front door there and looked at these 4 guys and shook their heads, and they didn't know whether to stay in that particular hotel that night or not. I think they almost turned and left. I always remember that story, especially with Vaughn.
There are other rhythms that use the same beat, and that's a kind of a strange thing to think about. You can have 2/4 music, but you can have other rhythms that are laid on top of it. For example, when we talk about a 2-step, does it sound different from a reel? People know 2-steps from round dancing? How about Caribbean music? Okay. Calypso type stuff. It's 2/4. And this is one. We'll get to that one in just a minute. Beat is strong, the phrase is strong, but you watch what happens to people when they start doing this thing. And you think of promenading down and back. Are they going to dance it straight? You're going to see them doing all kinds of stuff, wiggling with hips and hooping and hollering as they do the whole thing. And it's a crowd pleaser. Just really gives them a lift. But it's still the same musical structure as the other things that we've been looking at. That's Eco, and I think it's on, if I can find it, Sounds 2000. And we're going to drop the needle here on, we call it Real Madrid, I think it's Real Madrid, if that's okay. Another great crowd pleaser. You'll find people really get a lift out of that. That's a singing call called Real Madrid, R-E-A-L, Madrid, on TNT. And it's written as a quadrille. You can use it as a singing call. I use it constantly as a hoedown, but I also use it in my Contra dance program. Some dances work beautifully to that. Particularly if you have a lot of flowing movements to it. Yeah. He's dug something else out here. This is on Bogan. Anybody ever heard of Bogan record? There we have Music Box Dancer, and that's the Bogan version. There's also a good version that's out on TNT, and somebody else has got a good one, but one that people really, really enjoy dancing to, and has a special flavor to it all its own. So I think really what we have covered today is that to be successful in teaching and calling prompt contras, you need to be aware of the music that you use. You need to have heard it enough times that you know exactly where you are in the music, that you prompt ahead of time so that the dancers get the first beat to begin moving. And if you can really begin to enforce that, you'll find that people will settle in and dance in time to the music. They may want to rush for a while. Particularly if you're dealing with square dancers, they will rush you for a while. Hold them back, talk to them, tell them don't rush, and get them on that first beat, and all of a sudden they settle in and it feels right. And you can't believe the number of times people will, just cheer and holler out loud at the end of a contra dance during a square dance because they knew something special happened instead of just racing through figures. Any questions, comments from the crowd?
While Stu's getting the microphone, I think we also pointed out that traditional contra music, I think we usually think of Scottish music. And there are wonderful Scottish tunes from a lot of different sources. But we've tried to show that there's variety too. You can use jigs, you can use square dance calls. I use the singing call all the time called Fools Fall in Love. And it worked like a charm. It's just a nice, smooth singing call. So don't be afraid to use a little bit of variety. And when you do, make sure you're familiar with the record that you're using.
Yeah, Stu Shacklet again. I might mention that if any of you are looking for something that you can't find, like an old record that's down the line that, hey, we used to do this years ago and I can't find it, contact me. Chances are I have it in stock. I got all of the music from Michael Herman's estate when he passed away. Michael Herman was a record dealer in Long Island, New York. We had 2 semi-trailer trucks loaded with phonograph records that brought them to Kentucky. My wife and I indexed them and cataloged them and put them on the shelf. And they're all in our computer. And we just returned from the Lloyd Schultz Foundation with records that they were going to dispose of that they didn't need. 8,000 records. We went out the week before Christmas and picked those up and brought them back to the foundation. But the Kentucky Dance Foundation is taking care of this, and one of our really purposes is to preserve for future generations. So we're preserving everything that we've got. And if you're interested in something, many of the old LPs that had a lot of the country music on it, the Scottish and stuff, people say, oh, we can't buy them anymore. I have them in stock. They're on the shelf. So if you have something you're looking for, contact me, fdrc@aol.com, and I'll get back to you the same day that you contact. FDRC is Folk Dancer Record Center. Cappy Caffrey.
This is Cappy Caffrey from Seattle, Washington. What Stu said is right. I looked for 10 years to find a 78 of Bob Osgood doing the Grand Square on Capitol. A lot of people don't know he did it there. Then there was Laurie Moran way up in the coal country, way up in New Hampshire, was looking for a Ralph Page thing, and she checked all over. I says, write to Stu because he's got a barn full of it. And she got the record from him.
We need a microphone over here, Stu.
Yonachok from Hawaii. River Dance gave a real boost to using Irish and Scottish dancing music. We work a lot with kids, and that really kicked in for the kids, for the old style music. But we also have a group right now that's working, second graders, believe it or not, that are choreographing to Janet Jackson's Escapade, which is a real bouncy, rocking tune. So don't assume that the contemporary music is not useful for contra as well. You can put it together to contemporary music. Just count your beats. Listen to your music all the way through and count out all your beats.
The last few CALLERLAB sessions, they have had a special interest session on alternate music in square dancing. And some of the things that they have found, contemporary rap music, etc., for squares, and it's been working. And I think that Clark is planning at 11 o'clock after the contra dance tomorrow night, or tonight, 11 o'clock, zesty contras, and he's going to pull out some rock and roll and so forth that works for contra dancing, believe it or not. And I know that some people are going to say, you can't do that. but give it a try. Any questions, comments? How about a nice hand for Herb? And we thank you all for coming. I'm going to send you out the door with a little bit more of that Camp Town. It is 12:02.